That afternoon, I took my 12-year-old son Ethan to my mother's house on the outskirts of Dallas. The dry autumn wind swept along the streets scattered with golden leaves, the sound of shoes crunching beneath our feet. Ethan clutched my hand so tightly his small fingers dug into my skin. But that pain was nothing compared to the piercing ache in my chest when my eyes landed on the familiar truck parked at the gate. A black Ford, the license plate belonging to my husband, Daniel. My heart stopped cold. Daniel had told me he was busy supervising a project today, that he would be home late. Yet his truck sat boldly in my mother Margaret's driveway. A fleeting hope flashed in my mind. Maybe he stopped by to fix the porch or check a leaking pipe. But my instincts screamed that something was wrong. I signaled Ethan to stay quiet, pulling him along the fence toward the back. The kitchen window was still the same as when I was a child. Old, peeling wood, and the place where every conversation inside could be heard most clearly. Taking a deep breath, I leaned against the glass, and in a single moment my entire world shattered. Daniel's voice rang out, weary and cold. "She's too weak, Margaret. Always crying, always clinging. I can't stand it anymore." My mother's laugh cut like a blade. "I told you from the start, Daniel. Eva was never strong enough for a man like you. She's always been too fragile, too damaged. Marrying her was a mistake." Each word slammed into my ears like a hammer. I gripped the sill until my knuckles turned white. Ethan stared at me with wide, confused eyes, sensing something terrible though he couldn't fully grasp it. Daniel continued, his tone flat as if discussing the weather. "The life insurance money from her father's death helped me tolerate it for a while. But now it's nearly gone. I'm done pretending to be the devoted husband. Enough." Every syllable cut deep. That money, I had believed it was for Ethan's future, for college, for a safe life ahead. And all this time, Daniel had treated it as nothing more than his personal reward. My mother lowered her voice, though the delight was unmistakable. "So what's your plan?" "I'm leaving her. Taking everything. Eva won't fight back. She'll just cry and sign whatever I put in front of her. She's far too weak to stand against me." His words collapsed the roof of my soul. I felt the blood drain from my body. Pain, humiliation, betrayal from the two people I once thought were my safest harbor. My husband and my own mother. Ethan squeezed my hand harder, his eyes reddening, waiting for me to say something. But all I could do was press a finger to my lips, signaling silence. If I made a sound, they might hear not just my voice but the scream of a heart breaking apart. In the kitchen, their conversations struck like icy blades. "Don't drag it out, Daniel. You need to be firm. Eva has been nothing since the day she was born. Just like her father, weak, pathetic. At least he had the decency to die and leave some insurance money for you and me to enjoy." The laughter laced with contempt twisted my stomach. In that instant, I saw everything clearly. All the years I had tried to please my mother, all the effort I poured into holding my marriage together, it was nothing but a farce in their eyes. My chest felt crushed, yet deep inside, a cold fire sparked to life. The old Eva, soft, yielding, submissive, died behind that kitchen window. In her place, someone new began to emerge. I pulled Ethan away, each step deliberate as though retreating from a battlefield. After settling him in the back seat, I drove off in silence, my mind spinning. Ethan's small voice broke the heavy air. "Mom, what's going on? Why is Dad with Grandma?" I swallowed the bitterness and forced calm into my voice. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going home. I'll handle everything." I couldn't let my son see me fall apart. Not now. When the car stopped in the driveway of my house on the outskirts of Dallas, my hands were still trembling on the steering wheel. Ethan jumped out, clutching his backpack as he ran inside, carefree as if nothing had happened. I, on the other hand, sat frozen for several minutes, my legs heavy, my mind reeling. The truth I had just overheard still echoed like hammers pounding against my temples. Daniel, the man I had trusted for more than 13 years, had not only betrayed me but also conspired with my own mother to bury the future of me and my son. I stepped into the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned against the mirror. The reflection startled me. A 34-year-old woman, hair hastily tied, dark circles under weary eyes. I realized I had let my life become nothing more than someone else's shadow. From my mother's criticism, I learned silence. From my husband's demands, I learned sacrifice. And they treated that silence and sacrifice like a ticket to trample over me. Tears welled up, but I clenched my teeth to hold them back. I could not allow myself to cry like a failure anymore. If Daniel truly believed what he had said, that I would just sit and cry, signing anything he handed me, then he had no idea of the storm rising inside me. That night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, I sat alone in the living room, yellow light spilling across the cold tile floor. Memories rushed back. Our wedding day, the day I gave birth, nights waiting for Daniel to come home late. Every memory stained by deceit. Daniel had never truly loved me. He loved the life insurance money left by my father's accident. And my mother, Margaret, was not only cold but an accomplice, deliberate in her betrayal. The sting of betrayal twisted my heart, but alongside the pain rose a different strength. A part of me had died at that kitchen window, but from the ashes, someone new was being born. I could not allow Daniel and my mother to laugh over my suffering. I had to rise, not just to protect Ethan, but to show them I was not something to be discarded. The next morning, I still played the role of the dutiful wife. Daniel left early, kissing my cheek perfunctorily, the scent of expensive cologne lingering. I watched him climb into his truck, and inside me there was no longer grief, only the cold clarity of a plan forming. If I wanted to win, I had to be smarter, calmer. That afternoon, with Ethan at school, I opened the filing cabinet where Daniel kept his papers. For years he controlled all finances while I merely nodded along. Thick folders spilled out, bank statements, loan documents, contracts. My hands shook when I saw my own signature on papers I had never signed. The sloppy ink strokes were enough to pass, but they were forged. He had faked my signature. I sat down, flipping through page after page. A portion of the insurance money had vanished, withdrawn in cash or transferred into an unfamiliar account. My chest tightened when I saw a name repeated across several documents. Margaret H. Miller, my mother. They had opened a joint account. The scheme ran deeper than I imagined. I took a deep breath and used my phone to photograph every page. Every detail could be a weapon. I didn't know how far the law would take this, but I knew I would not sit back and let them strip everything away. That afternoon, I called my mother, forcing my voice to sound fragile. Mom, I'd like to invite you and Daniel to dinner this weekend. I feel like you've both been so busy and I miss you. Her voice came back sweet but tinged with mockery. You miss me? That's unusual. But fine, if you want, I'll come. I smiled, pretending to be grateful, though inside I was ice cold. They still thought I was the naive Eva, begging for scraps of affection. But that dinner would mark the beginning of something far larger. When night fell, I sat before the mirror, staring hard at myself. The woman looking back was no longer just a submissive victim. I whispered like a vow, they want to see me collapse. But they will see me rise. And for the first time in years, fear gave way to something else. A cold, unshakable resolve. This would not simply be a divorce. This would be a war. And I, Eva, would not lose. On Tuesday night, after Daniel left the house claiming he had more work at the project site, I sat alone in my small study, the desk lamp casting light over the stack of documents I had secretly photographed from his files. The more closely I examined them, the more my skin crawled. In several loan agreements and home refinancing papers, the signature Eva Miller appeared repeatedly. But the handwriting wasn't mine. I had never signed them. Daniel had forged my name, and my mother, Margaret, was listed as a joint account holder on many records. I bit my lip until it bled. Every dollar of the life insurance from my father's death, which should have been the foundation for Ethan's secure future, had been quietly divided between them. But the sense of helplessness quickly gave way to clarity. If they were determined to strip me of everything, then I had to be twice as shrewd to protect my son. The next day, I went to an electronics store in downtown Dallas. I picked out a recorder no bigger than a finger that could slip into a pocket, and a hidden camera disguised as a digital photo frame. The salesman explained how to use them, and I nodded calmly, though my heart raced. These devices would be my ears and eyes, exposing who they truly were. On Friday night, Daniel again used the excuse of supervising work, and didn't come back until nearly midnight. I sent Ethan to sleep over at a classmate's house and drove myself to the old home where I had grown up. The neighborhood was dark and quiet, only the kitchen light glowing from my mother's house. I quietly placed the recorder near the back window, my chest tightening as I heard their voices. How much longer before you end things with her? My mother's voice pressed. Don't rush, Margaret. Daniel answered, lowering his voice. After Christmas. I don't want to stir things up in front of the boy. And we need to get the paperwork in order. My lawyer says once we prove Eva is mentally unstable, I'll have full custody of Ethan. My mother gave a short, cruel laugh. She's been unstable her whole life. Always crying, timid, never amounting to anything. Everyone knows she breaks easily. Just get a few notes from a therapist and that's enough. My whole body shook. Daniel had encouraged me to see a counselor to relieve stress. But now I realized it had been part of his plan to fake a record and steal custody of my son. And the house. Margaret pressed further. It's being handled. I already forged her signature on the refinance. Once it's finalized, Eva will have nothing. She'll be out on the street with empty hands. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms until they bled, but bit down hard to stop myself from crying out. In the shadows, I knew I had just captured golden evidence. Not only their affair but also their plot to destroy my reputation and take my child. On Monday morning, I met a lawyer in Fort Worth, far enough from my home that Daniel wouldn't find out. Her name was Daisy Walsh, in her 40s, sharp-eyed with a calm voice. After I laid out the photos and the recording, Daisy studied me for a long moment, then said, "Eva, you already have the foundation for a strong divorce case. This isn't just about dividing assets. Your husband and your mother have committed deliberate financial fraud. If you agree, I'll file to secure custody of Ethan and bring them both before the law." I nodded, my voice hoarse. I have no way back. Ethan is everything to me. That afternoon, through Daisy's referral, I met Mike Torres, a private investigator who had once been a cop. A man in his 50s with a sturdy build. He spoke directly. "I'll track Daniel. If he keeps meeting Margaret, we'll have photos and videos. Be prepared, the truth may be uglier than you expect." I swallowed hard, clutching the purse where the recorder was hidden. I've already heard enough to know I have nothing left to lose. What I need now is undeniable proof. Mike gave a short nod, his eyes showing no pity, only respect. "You're braver than many women I've worked with. My job now is to arm you with the evidence you need." In the days that followed, I lived two parallel lives. By day, I worked at the library, smiling with colleagues, preparing dinner with Ethan, keeping up the appearance of a normal family. By night, I whispered notes to myself. Daniel's late arrivals, my mother's odd calls, his excuses about business trips. Quietly, I planted a camera in the living room where Daniel and Margaret sometimes met. A week later, when I checked the footage, my heart nearly stopped. On the screen, Daniel and Margaret sat close together, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, her voice crystal clear. "Don't worry. Once Eva is labeled unstable, no one will believe a word she says. Ethan will be with us." That word has made my skin crawl. Yet at the same time, an iron determination surged within me. The evidence was falling into place and I would turn it into the blade that flipped the entire game. When the screen went dark, I sat in the shadows, my hand gripping the file and the recorder. I was no longer the fragile Eva of the past. Now I had a lawyer, a private investigator, and a plan. The following evening, when Daniel walked into the house in dusty clothes with his familiar smile, I returned the smile as though nothing was wrong. He leaned down to kiss my cheek, whispering, "Sorry, late again." I nodded, playing the submissive wife, hiding the storm of rage boiling inside me. At dinner, I gently brought up conversation. "Daniel, the insurance company called me today. They said there's an adjustment on my dad's policy, something about recalculated interest and a delayed payout. They said there may be an extra, about $40,000. His chopsticks froze mid-air. Daniel quickly masked his surprise with a strained smile. "Really? That's great news. When will it come in?" "They said they still need to verify some details. It might take a few weeks. I'm not sure yet." I spoke vaguely, deliberately adding my usual timid tone. I saw the glint of greed in Daniel's eyes. I noticed every flicker but lowered my gaze, pretending to serve Ethan another bite as if the topic was trivial. Inside, I knew I had just bought myself precious time. In the following days, I transformed into the old fragile Eva so convincingly that even I was surprised. I let Daniel see me flustered whenever he mentioned paperwork, nodded obediently when my mother suggested, "Eva should be grateful to her husband," obedient. I even pretended to apologize whenever Daniel showed irritation, as if every fault was mine. Each forced smile of mine only made them more confident that Eva would never fight back. Meanwhile, I quietly gathered more evidence. Mike, the private investigator, sent me a new set of photos. Daniel and my mother leaving a motel on the outskirts of town. In the picture, Margaret clung to Daniel's arm, beaming like a young lover. Looking at those images, disgust rose in my throat, but so did my resolve. These were the missing pieces completing their portrait of betrayal. I also installed another hidden camera in the living room. One weekend, I lied that I had to take Ethan to a friend's house to study, leaving the home to Daniel. When I returned, the footage revealed him and my mother sitting together, plotting how to transfer the house deed into new ownership, and how to build evidence Eva is mentally unstable. Hearing their voices sent chills through me, but alongside the dread came a grim satisfaction. I now had irrefutable proof. I didn't stop there. One afternoon, I slipped into Daniel's office where he kept his laptop. I plugged in a small USB and copied his financial files and emails. Among them, I found exchanges between him and my mother. Discussions of moving money, forging medical records about me, even planning to sell the house once Eva's out of the way. Each word was a blade, but I refused to break. To Daniel, I was still the fragile wife, sometimes shedding tears over worrying about the future, always thanking him for putting up with a woman as unstable as me. He believed in the performance completely. Once, Daniel even patted my shoulder with a smirk. "Eva, you're lucky to have a man like me. Not everyone would put up with someone as fragile as you." I nodded, eyes shimmering as if moved, while inside I thought, "Soon you'll learn what it means to underestimate me." Every night after Daniel fell asleep, I sat at the desk, organizing all the evidence. Photos, recordings, emails, bank statements, all carefully stored on 2 separate hard drives, one hidden at the library where I worked, the other given to Daisy, my lawyer. Daisy often called to encourage me, "Eva, you're on the right track. Stay in character until the very end. When the time comes, we'll unleash everything." In our secret meetings, both Daisy and Mike were astonished at how complete the evidence was. Mike even exclaimed, "In 30 years, I've never seen a woman gather proof this skillfully. Daniel and Margaret are walking straight into a trap." Hearing that, I smiled. Not with joy, but with the grim satisfaction of someone finally stepping out of fear's shadow. And I knew my counterattack was reaching its critical point. Daniel grew restless, constantly asking, "Has the insurance called back yet? When's the money coming?" I bit my lip, answering with feigned fear, "They said maybe next week." "I really hope so." Daniel sighed and turned away, never realizing that every frown and every greedy word of his was already being forged into the very knife I would turn against him. On a Monday morning at the end of the month, I sat in Daisy Walsh's office, pen poised over a thick stack of documents. Before me lay the pages marked clearly, the divorce petition and the request to freeze bank accounts. As my name, Eva Miller, flowed onto the page, I felt as though a binding chain I had carried for years had just been cut. Daisy looked up, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "By the end of today, the freeze order will reach every bank involved. Daniel won't be able to withdraw a single dollar. As for the fraud case, I'll take it to the authorities. Eva, it's time for you not only to defend yourself but to strike back." I nodded, my shoulders lighter, though I knew the real storm was only beginning. That afternoon, I submitted every piece of evidence I had gathered, photos of the affair, recordings of their schemes, forged documents, to the Dallas County Police. The officer receiving them, Robert Jenkins, a man in his 50s, frowned as he flipped through. He looked straight at me. "Mrs. Miller, this isn't just a civil matter. This is criminal. Financial fraud, conspiracy to seize assets, even possible forgery of federal documents. I'll deliver this immediately to the prosecutor." Walking out of the station, the cold wind struck my face, sharp but sobering. I knew from that moment Daniel and my mother, Margaret, had nowhere left to hide. 3 days later, as Daniel stepped out of his pickup to enter a familiar cafe, 2 patrol cars cut him off at the door. From a distance, my heart pounded as I watched him handcuffed in front of dozens of onlookers. He shouted, panicked, "This is a mistake. I didn't do anything wrong." But his voice trembled, his eyes darting like an animal trapped in a corner. At the same time, across town, Margaret was arrested at her home. Neighbors later told me she screamed, cursed at everyone, even tried to deny everything. "Eva made this up. She's been crazy since she was a child. But police had it all: recordings, videos, joint accounts, forged signatures. Her excuses only revealed her cruelty and desperation. That night, Daisy called me. "Eva, both are in custody. The prosecutor will press multiple charges. You can rest easy, Ethan won't be touched by them anymore." I sat in the living room while Ethan slept soundly in the next room. What rose in me wasn't glee but a quiet peace tinged with bitterness. Never had I imagined needing the police to protect me from my husband and my own mother. But that was the truth. The next day I was summoned to give an official statement. Walking down the hallway, I caught a glimpse of Daniel in holding, slumped and disheveled. He looked up, eyes a mix of hatred and despair. I stopped, said nothing, just held his gaze before turning away. That look was enough to say we were finished. As for my mother, I couldn't bring myself to face her. I only knew she kept insisting she just followed Daniel's lead, that everything was for the family's good. But the recordings proved otherwise. She hadn't just gone along, she had urged and fueled every step of betrayal. News of the arrests spread quickly through town. Calls poured in, some shocked, some sympathetic. What surprised me most was how many said, "Eva, we always felt something was off with Daniel and your mother, we just didn't dare say it." Hearing that, I felt both sorrow and relief. Truth can't be hidden forever. A week later, I received official notice. The joint account Daniel and Margaret had opened was frozen, every remaining dollar sealed until trial. The house where Ethan and I lived was confirmed as mine alone, since the forged documents had been voided. That night, I pulled my son close and whispered, "Ethan, from now on we're safe. No one will take this house, no one will take you from me." He nestled into my shoulder, voice sleepy. "I believe you, Mom. I know you're strong." Those innocent words nearly broke me into tears. For years I had lived under the weight of scorn, letting others define my worth. But in that moment I understood. True strength is not enduring silently but rising when you're pushed down. And as the soft glow of the nightlight filled our little room, I knew the greatest battle was already behind us. The trial took place on a spring morning, the courtroom packed with people. I sat in the front row, clutching the files Daisy had prepared for months. Daniel sat at the defendant's table, his suit disheveled, his face gaunt. A few seats away, my mother, Margaret, wore a gray coat, her eyes avoiding mine. The judge read the charges, each count echoing through the room: financial fraud, forgery, conspiracy to seize assets. When the prosecutor presented the evidence, voice recordings, emails, photos of the affair, and forged loan documents, there was no doubt left in the courtroom. Daniel kept his head down, fists clenched tight as if to crush everything in his grasp. Margaret tried to hold her chin high, but her icy stare couldn't mask the fear creeping in. Finally, the verdict was delivered. Daniel Miller sentenced to 3 years in prison, Margaret Miller to 18 months for complicity and incitement. The gavel struck, the room shuddered. I exhaled, not in triumph, but in the sense that justice had landed where it belonged. Outside, neighbors and colleagues from the library embraced me. Mary, the eldest librarian, held my trembling hand. "Eva, we're proud of you. For so many years you were belittled, but you stood up and defended yourself." Her words brought a lump to my throat. I realized that in this small community, people had been watching, waiting for the day I would free myself from chains of silence. Legally, I regained full ownership of my home and custody of Ethan. The court dismissed Daniel's fabricated claims of my mental instability, recognizing them as nothing but a ploy to steal custody. Ethan would stay with me, and that mattered more than any sentence. In the months that followed, I felt the changes deeply. No more slamming car doors at night, no more scornful glances from my mother. Instead, mornings of walking Ethan to school, afternoons at the library, evenings sharing meals and small conversations. The peace of those routines was what I had longed for. One day, the library director, Mrs. Johnson, called me into her office. She placed a hand on a file, smiling. "Eva, after everything you've shown, I'd like to nominate you as head librarian. You've shown responsibility, resilience, and earned your colleagues' trust. We need someone like you to lead this place." I froze, my heart pounding. I had always thought of myself as just a quiet staff member. But now, after the storms, I stood recognized in a way I had never dared to dream. Ethan too had changed. One evening as I folded laundry, he came close and whispered, "Mom, you're stronger now. I'm not scared Dad will take me away anymore. I know you'll always protect me. I pulled him into my arms, tears falling on his shoulder. His words meant more to me than any courtroom victory. Our town was small, news traveled fast. Some whispered, but most offered congratulations. Many women told me my decision to bring everything into the light inspired them, those who had endured control and emotional abuse in silence. I hadn't expected my fight to ripple out this way. Yet some nights I still lay awake, hearing Daniel's voice, my mother's mocking laughter echoing from behind that kitchen window. The pain didn't vanish, but it reminded me how far I'd come. I was no longer the old Eva, the woman who endured. I had become someone else, sharp, steady, ready to defend what was mine. When summer arrived, I hosted a small party for Ethan's 13th birthday. In the yard, under twinkling string lights, my son laughed freely with his friends. Watching him, pride swelled within me. I had given Ethan a safe home, the clearest proof that justice was real. That night, after the guests left, I sat on the porch, warm summer air brushing my hair. A question stirred. Would Daniel or my mother ever try to come back one day? I wasn't sure. But if they did, this time I wouldn't tremble. I had the support of the community, the law, and most importantly, myself. Justice hadn't erased every scar, but it gave me something greater, the right to own my life. And I knew that from here on, every step Ethan and I took would no longer be shadowed by betrayal. In the months after the trial, I stepped into a new life. At first, everything felt so unfamiliar that I moved like someone learning to walk again after years in chains. But instead of fear, I treated it as a chance to recreate myself. I cut off the long hair I had always kept because Daniel liked it, replacing it with a neat short style. I bought bright dresses I once avoided, afraid of being called showy. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and saw someone different. Eva, confident, no longer hiding in the shadows. Work at the library brought me peace. As head librarian, I organized community events, children's reading classes, workshops encouraging women to return to education, and sessions on financial literacy. I wanted other women never to repeat my mistake of surrendering their money to someone else's control. People in town began to look at me differently, not the timid Eva they once knew, but a dedicated leader, an inspiration. Ethan grew in ways that made me proud. I always told him, true strength isn't about control, it's about respect. Each night before bed, we talked about what we'd been through. Once he asked, "Mom, do you regret it? Letting Dad hurt you so much?" I smiled and answered, "No, son. Because without those wounds, I wouldn't have learned how to rise. More importantly, I can teach you never to hurt others that way." Time passed. Ethan turned 16, tall and steady. He often helped me shelve books at the library and even volunteered at programs supporting single mothers. Watching him treat everyone with kindness and respect, I knew I had chosen the right path. I hadn't just saved myself, I had shaped a different generation. I also learned to enjoy life on my own terms. I joined a morning yoga class, took up cooking lessons, and sometimes drove to places I'd never dared to visit. Once I took Ethan to the Florida coast. We stood before the rolling waves and he shouted with joy like a little boy. I realized how long I had forgotten the simple innocence of life. Now I had found it again. Financially, I was more stable than ever. The settlement money was divided into funds. One for Ethan's college future, one for long-term investment, and the rest to improve the library. I no longer feared opening the utility bill, no longer dreaded asking my husband, "Can I buy this?" Financial freedom gave me a quiet pride. Some nights I sat alone on the porch, the breeze brushing past, remembering the night I stood outside my mother's window, overhearing the words that tried to destroy me. That memory now felt different. No longer a bleeding wound, but a scar. A reminder that I had once been brought low and then I had risen. People often asked if I planned to start a new relationship. I only smiled. I didn't reject love, but it no longer defined my worth. If someone truly worthy entered my life, he would have to love me as I am, not as a shadow. If not, I was already happy with my life and with Ethan. One autumn evening at a community meeting, I stood before many people and said, "I once thought silence kept a family together. But the truth is, silence only feeds cruelty. We have the right to speak, to defend ourselves, and no one has the right to strip away our dignity." Applause thundered through the hall. In the eyes of many women, I saw recognition and courage newly awakened. After years, I could finally say, I was no longer afraid. I had walked through betrayal's darkness, through long nights of tears, only to find light within myself. Happiness wasn't clinging to those who betrayed me, but building a free life where my son grew up surrounded by love and respect. And I knew my healing journey would continue, but this time I wasn't walking alone. I was walking with the strength and faith forged from those painful days. There are nights when the town has gone still, and I sit alone by the living room window, watching the streetlights spill across the glass. In those quiet moments, the memories of my darkest days return. The moment I overheard my husband and my own mother plotting to destroy me. That betrayal once felt like it would crush me, yet instead it became the fire that burned away every trace of weakness I had left. I came to understand that sometimes the people we love most can be the ones who hurt us the deepest. Daniel was the man I trusted through 12 years of marriage, and Margaret was the woman who gave me life. Yet their betrayal revealed a truth. Blood ties and wedding vows do not always mean love and protection. The one thing we must never surrender is our faith in ourselves. If I had given up back then, Daniel would have stolen everything, and Margaret would have drowned me in humiliation. But in choosing to face them and fight back, I began to truly live. Revenge, I learned, is not only about making the betrayer pay in court. It is proof that I am no longer the weak woman they once despised. As time passed, a new life took shape. I no longer feared making my own decisions or trembled when I thought about the future. I became an example for Ethan, so my son would know that women deserve respect and that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to stand tall in the midst of it. Once, during a community class I organized, a young woman asked me, "Eva, what is the sweetest revenge?" I looked at her for a long moment before answering, "It isn't watching the betrayers fall. The sweetest revenge is living free, living happy, and proving they could not destroy you. We cannot control what others do, but we can choose how we live. And when we live stronger, freer, happier than ever, every act of betrayal becomes meaningless." Now each morning I brew a cup of coffee, open the window to the sunlight, and smile knowing I am living a life I built myself. I am no longer the passive Eva, waiting for others to decide my fate. I am Eva as I am today, free, confident, and proud. Betrayal nearly broke me, but in the end, it became the catalyst for my rebirth. And I know for the rest of my life I will carry this truth as a reminder. The sweetest revenge is to live well, live beautifully, and live happier than ever before. Alice's story reflects a painful yet familiar truth. In some families, sacrifice is demanded endlessly as if one person's suffering is acceptable. But her journey shows that true happiness begins the moment we find the courage to set boundaries. Even today, many are struggling with injustice and pressure from their own relatives. The lesson is clear. Family only has meaning when it comes with respect, and freedom and peace only exist when we choose to protect ourselves. What do you think about my journey and what my family did? Would you choose forgiveness or a clean break? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and emotional real-life family stories.